there, everyone. Welcome to the Retirement Wealth Podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that I think a lot of folks find really intriguing: the pros and cons of owning rental property in retirement.
Absolutely, Emily. It's a big decision, and for many, it could be a great way to generate some extra income. But it also comes with its own set of challenges, right?
Exactly. So, we're going to break it down. Talk about the benefits, like passive income and potential appreciation, but also some of the downsides. Things like the responsibilities of being a landlord or market fluctuations.
Yeah, and it's important to consider your personal situation too. Not every retirement plan looks the same, and rental properties might not be for everyone, but we'll explore how they can fit into your overall strategy.
We'll also touch on some practical tips for managing properties and how to assess whether it's the right move for your retirement plan. It's all about making informed decisions, right?
Definitely. It's about balancing the risks and rewards and understanding what you're getting into before you jump in with both feet.
So let's get started. First off, David, what do you see as some of the key benefits of owning rental property during retirement?
Emily, when we talk about rental properties and retirement, it really hits home for a lot of folks right now.
Absolutely, David. With so much uncertainty in the markets and rising inflation, many retirees are looking for ways to make their money work harder for them, right?
Exactly. And owning rental property can be a great way to generate that consistent income stream, especially when Social Security alone might not cover all expenses.
Right, and let's not forget about the rising healthcare costs. It's a concern for so many people. Having that extra income can really ease some of those worries.
I had a couple come to me recently. They were both approaching retirement and had been considering purchasing a rental property. They saw it as a way to combat inflation, something that's increasingly on everyone's mind these days.
That's a smart move. If you can set your rental price to keep pace with inflation, you're kind of insulating yourself from those rising living costs.
Exactly. But, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I always tell clients to think about the potential downsides too. Like, what happens if the property sits empty for a month or two?
Right. Vacancy can be a real issue. And then there are maintenance costs, unexpected repairs. Those can quickly add up.
Yes, and that's why it's crucial to have a solid financial cushion before diving into property ownership. I've seen retirees stretch their finances too thin, thinking it'll just be a breeze.
And with market volatility, it can be even trickier right now. If someone buys a property and the market takes a hit, well, they might find themselves in a tougher spot than they anticipated.
Exactly. It's about weighing the pros and cons carefully. For some, rental properties might be an excellent way to secure their legacy, especially if they plan to pass it down to family.
That's a good point. Families often want to create something that lasts, and property can be a tangible asset that appreciates over time. But it's not just about the financial aspect, is it?
No, not at all. There's an emotional side too. Many retirees want that sense of security, knowing they have something to fall back on. It's about feeling stable in their golden years.
Yes, and I think that emotional security is so crucial. If they have a reliable rental income, it can provide peace of mind, knowing that they're not entirely reliant on fluctuating market income or Social Security.
Right, and let's discuss taxes for a moment. Owning rental property can offer some tax efficiencies too. The depreciation on the property can offset rental income, reducing the overall tax burden.
That's a great point, but I imagine some people don't fully understand how that works. It can feel overwhelming, especially when it comes to tax laws changing frequently.
True, and that's where working with a financial advisor can really help. They can guide you through the complexities and ensure you're making informed decisions.
And with the current trends in the economy, it's vital to stay proactive. We're seeing shifts that can affect real estate markets. A lot of folks are moving to suburban areas, which could impact rental demand.
Yes, and that's something to consider if you're thinking about purchasing rental property. You want to be in a location that's desirable and has a strong potential for rental income.
I can imagine how critical it is to do your homework before jumping in. It's not just about buying any property. It's about finding the right one that fits your long-term goals.
Exactly, and sometimes it's helpful to think of it like a long-term investment rather than just a short-term cash grab. You want to ensure it aligns with your overall retirement plan.
Some people might also want to consider alternative rental strategies like short-term rentals. With platforms like Airbnb, there's potential for higher returns, but then there's that added layer of management.
Yes, the short-term rental market can be lucrative, but it does come with its own set of challenges, like constantly having to market the property and manage bookings.
Right, and if you're already in retirement, do you really want to be that hands-on? It's important to weigh how much time and effort you want to put in.
That's a valid point. Some retirees prefer a more hands-off approach, and traditional long-term rentals might be more appealing for those looking for stability without the daily hassle.
And let's not forget the importance of long-term planning. You have to think about how this property fits into your larger financial strategy. What if you need to access that equity later on?
Exactly. Property is an illiquid asset, so you have to be mindful of your cash flow. Having a backup plan is essential in case you face unexpected circumstances.
So it seems like there are a lot of moving parts to consider. As we transition into discussing some core strategies, I think it's clear that doing thorough research and planning is crucial for anyone considering rental properties in retirement.
Yes, and understanding your own financial situation as well as your long-term goals will be key to making the right decision. Let's dive into some specific strategies that can help navigate this complex landscape. So, Emily, when we think about owning rental property in retirement, it's really important to weigh the pros and cons, right? Like, on one hand, you have the potential for a steady income stream.
Yeah, definitely. That monthly rent can be quite appealing, especially if you're looking to supplement your retirement income. But what do you think about the time and effort involved in managing a rental property?
Good point. It can be a lot of work. There's maintenance, tenant management, and, unexpected repairs. I mean, if the roof leaks, that's on you, and those costs can add up quickly.
Right, and then you have to factor in the possibility of vacancies. What happens if you don't have a tenant for a couple of months? That could really impact your cash flow.
Exactly. It's crucial for retirees to have a buffer in their budget for those times. Some people recommend setting aside at least 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in an emergency fund. That way, if a rental property sits empty, you're not scrambling to cover your bills.
That makes sense. And speaking of covering expenses, what about the tax implications of owning rental property? I've heard there can be some benefits, but it's not straightforward.
Right, rental properties can offer tax advantages. For instance, you can deduct expenses like property management fees, maintenance costs, and even depreciation. However, you need to be aware of how rental income is taxed. It's typically taxed as ordinary income, which can be a bit of a shock if you're not prepared.
So it could push you into a higher tax bracket, especially if you have other income sources like Social Security or distributions from your 401k or IRA.
Exactly. And that leads us to another strategy, diversification. It's often recommended that retirees don't put all their eggs in one basket. Having a mix of assets can provide more stability. So maybe you have some stocks, bonds, and a piece of rental property.
Yeah, I like that idea. But how do you figure out the right balance? Is there a rule of thumb for asset allocation in retirement?
There is. A common approach is the 70-30th rule, where you allocate 70% of your portfolio to stocks and 30% to bonds. But, that can vary based on your risk tolerance and how close you are to retirement. Some folks might want to adjust that as they age.
And I suppose if you're more conservative, you might lean more towards bonds, right?
Exactly. Bonds can provide more stability, which is comforting when you're living off your investments. Plus, they typically pay interest, which can help with cash flow.
Speaking of cash flow, let's talk about withdrawal strategies. I've heard of the 4% rule. How does that fit into all of this?
The 4% rule is a guideline suggesting you can withdraw 4% of your retirement savings each year without running out of money for at least 30 years. It's a good starting point, but it's important to adjust based on market conditions and your personal situation.
So if you have $1 million saved, you could withdraw about $40,000 a year, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But, it's not just about the percentage. The sequence of returns can really impact your portfolio, especially early in retirement. If you experience significant losses right after you retire, it can be detrimental.
That's so true. So using a bucket strategy could be a good alternative, right?
Yes. The bucket strategy involves dividing your assets into different buckets. You might have a short-term bucket for immediate expenses, a medium-term bucket for expenses a few years out, and a long-term bucket invested in growth assets. This way, you're less affected by market volatility.
I love that concept. It feels more secure to have funds allocated based on when you'll need them. Plus, it could potentially reduce the stress of market fluctuations.
Absolutely, and let's not forget about tax-advantaged accounts like 401, KS, and IRAs. It's essential to consider how and when you withdraw from these accounts, especially since they can be taxed differently than rental income.
Right, and if you take out too much from a tax-deferred account, you could bump yourself into a higher tax bracket. That's something to keep an eye on.
Yes, and with required minimum distributions, or RMDs, kicking in at age 73, planning those withdrawals becomes even more critical. You want to ensure that you're not taking more than necessary, which could lead to unnecessary taxes.
So smart. And it all comes down to having a solid plan in place. But, despite all these strategies, there are still some common pitfalls retirees should watch out for.
Definitely. One major pitfall is underestimating expenses. Many people think they can easily live off rental income, but they forget about property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs.
Yeah, and unexpected repairs can really throw a wrench in your budget. It's like if the air conditioning goes out in July, that can be a huge hit.
Exactly. Another pitfall is not having a clear exit strategy. You really need to think about what happens if you decide to sell the property, or if you can't manage it anymore. It's important to have a plan for those scenarios.
Those are really insightful points, David. It seems like careful planning and consideration can make a huge difference in whether renting properties is a good fit for someone's retirement.
Absolutely. And remember, it's about balancing the potential for income against the responsibilities that come with it. Each individual's circumstances are different, and making informed decisions is key.
Thanks for those insights, David. I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, it's always good to have these discussions. It's all about empowering people to make the best choices for their future.
And with that, let's transition into exploring those common pitfalls retirees can face when it comes to rental properties and beyond.
So Emily, as we dive deeper into the pros and cons of owning rental property in retirement, it's important to talk about some common pitfalls that people often encounter.
Absolutely, David. I think one of the biggest mistakes is underestimating the sequence of returns risk. Many retirees don't realize how the order of investment returns can impact their portfolios.
Right, exactly. For instance, if you face a market downturn early in your retirement, it can really deplete your nest egg. And if you're relying on rental income, that can add even more pressure. I remember working with a couple, let's call them Tom and Sarah. They had a nice chunk saved up, but right out of the gate, the market dipped.
No, that's tough. What happened to them?
Well, they had planned to withdraw a specific amount each year for their living expenses. But when the market turned, their withdrawals became a larger percentage of their remaining assets. They had to pivot quickly, and it was a lot of stress for them.
That sounds overwhelming. It's like their retirement plan was built on shaky ground.
Exactly. And that leads us to the next common mistake, ignoring taxes during withdrawals. A lot of retirees think they can just take out money without considering the tax implications.
Right. I've heard stories where people end up in a higher tax bracket because they weren't mindful of how much they were pulling from their retirement accounts.
Yes, and I had another client, let's call her Linda, who found herself in that very situation. She sold a rental property, thinking the profit would just be extra income for her retirement, but she didn't factor in the capital gains tax.
Oh no, I can imagine the surprise when tax season rolled around.
You'd be surprised how many people overlook that. Linda ended up with a significantly reduced amount after taxes. It's crucial to have a solid tax strategy in place.
So what's the takeaway here?
Well, one approach is to have a diversified withdrawal strategy. Balancing between taxable and tax-deferred accounts can help smooth out those tax bumps.
That makes sense. And what about healthcare costs? That's another big one that people tend to underestimate, right?
Absolutely. Many retirees don't account for the rising costs of healthcare and, potential long-term care. I worked with a gentleman named Frank who thought he'd be fine with his Medicare coverage, but when he needed a procedure, the out-of-pocket costs were astronomical.
That's a real eye-opener.
Yes, and Frank had to dip into his retirement savings to cover those expenses. It's vital for retirees to consider these healthcare costs in their planning and to have a separate fund or strategy to cover those unexpected medical bills.
Speaking of unexpected costs, how about longevity? I've heard that people often underestimate how long they might live.
Right, that's a major factor. Many people plan for 20 years of retirement, but what if they live for 30 or more? I had a couple, let's say their names are Joe and Mary, who thought they'd be just fine with what they'd saved. But when Joe turned 90, they really started to feel the pinch.
Wow, that's a long time to stretch your savings.
It is. They hadn't planned for that longevity, and suddenly their lifestyle had to change. They had to cut back on expenses, which was tough for them.
So it's so important to plan for a longer horizon, and not just assume you'll be done by a certain age.
Exactly. Another common pitfall is poor asset allocation. Some retirees hold too much in cash or overly conservative investments because they're afraid of losing money.
And that can really hurt them in the long run, right?
Yes, it can. I had a client, let's call him Michael, who was so risk-averse that he kept most of his retirement savings in cash. When inflation hit, he saw his purchasing power dwindle.
Oh, that's a real bummer.
Yeah, and by the time he realized he needed to adjust his asset allocation, it was almost too late. It's essential to strike a balance between risk and growth, especially in retirement.
And what about Social Security? I know that can be a tricky area as well.
Definitely. A lot of people claim Social Security too early. They think they're getting free money, but it can cost them in the long run. I had a client, let's call her Susan, who claimed at 62.
That's pretty common.
Right, but by doing that, she left a lot of money on the table. If she had waited until 70, her benefit would have increased significantly.
So it's about weighing the immediate need for income against the long-term benefits.
Exactly. It's essential to have a plan for when to claim Social Security based on your individual situation.
So, David, how can our listeners spot these red flags early?
Well, first, I'd say to regularly review your financial plan, and don't hesitate to seek advice from a financial advisor. If you notice any discrepancies in your budget or unexpected expenses, that's a signal to take a closer look.
And keeping an eye on your asset allocation, and maybe even doing an annual checkup on your healthcare plans can be really helpful too.
Absolutely. It's all about being proactive rather than reactive. And if you find yourself facing these common pitfalls, remember, it's never too late to make adjustments.
Right. So what are some next steps for our listeners to recover or avoid these issues?
Start by assessing your current financial situation. Review your income sources, expenses, and asset allocations. Make sure you're planning for taxes and healthcare costs. And don't forget to think about how long you might actually live in retirement.
Those are great tips, David. It feels empowering to take control of your financial future.
It really is. And remember, the goal is to create a sustainable retirement plan that can weather the ups and downs of life.
Well said.
All right, so let's dive into some immediate steps folks can take if they're considering rental properties as part of their retirement plan.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing to do is, really assess your financial situation. I mean, you want to know where you stand before jumping in, right?
Exactly. So start by reviewing your current portfolio. You could do this quarterly, maybe. It helps to see how your investments are performing and whether you have the capacity for more risk or if you should be more conservative.
That makes sense. And, using retirement calculators can be super helpful. Vanguard, Fidelity, and Schwab all have great tools that let you run different scenarios based on your current savings and how much income you might need.
Yes, those calculators can provide a clearer picture of your retirement income needs. And if you're seriously considering rental properties, you might want to run those projections to see how they could fit in.
Totally. Plus, if you're looking to buy a rental property, it's a good idea to check out the local market. Websites like Zillow or Realtor.com can give you insights into property values, rental rates, and neighborhood trends.
And don't forget about the tax implications. I recommend checking out SSA.gov for Social Security projections and understanding how rental income could affect your benefits.
Right, and tax software can help you figure out how rental income fits into your overall tax picture. It's crucial to understand that before diving in.
Speaking of understanding, reading some good books can really broaden your perspective. Titles like Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, or the book on rental property investing by Brandon Turner are fantastic.
Oh, I love those. They offer real-world insights and are super accessible for anyone, regardless of their experience level.
Podcasts can be a great tool, too. There are some really informative ones out there that focus on real estate investing and retirement planning, like Bigger Pockets Money or the Real Estate Guys radio show.
Yeah, those are really engaging. It's always nice to hear stories and strategies from people who've been there.
And getting into the habit of regularly reviewing your investment strategies is key. Maybe set a reminder every few months to run those retirement projections and check in on your rental property plans.
That's a great tip. And, even if you're already retired, it's never too late to improve your plan. Small adjustments can make a big difference over time.
Absolutely. Even if you're just starting to think about it, the important thing is to take that first step. You could also consider speaking with a financial advisor who specializes in real estate investments. They can help tailor a plan just for you.
Right. And don't hesitate to use apps that can help you track your finances or manage properties. There are plenty out there that can streamline the process.
Yes, tools like Mint or Personal Capital can help you manage your overall financial health, while property management apps like Cozy can simplify the management of rental properties.
It sounds like there are a lot of resources available to help.
There really are. So once you have your tools and strategies in place, you'll feel more confident about moving forward with rental properties as part of your retirement plan.
Exactly. And as you start, remember to take it one step at a time.
Well said. All right, so with these tools in your pocket, you're ready to strengthen your retirement plan. Let's recap what we've covered today. Wow, Emily, what a great discussion we just had on the pros and cons of owning rental property in retirement. It really highlights some important points for our listeners.
Absolutely, David. So let's recap a few key takeaways. First, owning rental property can provide a steady income stream, which is great for supplementing retirement savings, right?
Yeah, and on the flip side, we talked about the potential for unexpected expenses. Maintenance, repairs, and those occasional vacancies can really add up. It's something to consider before diving in.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of time commitment. Managing a rental property can be time-consuming, so it's crucial to think about whether you want to take that on during retirement.
Right, and we can't forget about the tax implications. There can be benefits, but you've got to be aware of how they affect your overall financial picture.
So true. It's all about weighing those pros and cons. And for many, the decision might come down to personal preference and lifestyle.
Well, whatever path you choose, remember that building and protecting your retirement wealth is a journey. Take it one step at a time, and don't hesitate to seek guidance if you need it.
And speaking of guidance, we'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and subscribe. And, drop a comment sharing your biggest takeaway or even a question you might have.
Or maybe share this episode with someone you know who's planning for retirement or already in it. It could really help them out.
Yes, and don't forget to join us next time. We'll dive into how cost of living adjustments affect Social Security. It's going to be really informative.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Take care, and we'll see you next time.